Hello everyone and welcome back. It is time for round 4 in this FRS Formula 1 Team My Team playthrough. After last week's miss on the points in Vietnam, we had a bit of a late mistake right around the pit window where we took some wing damage, had to make that wing change, and as a result dropped ourselves outside of the points. We were running into decent position before that, but definitely harmed ourselves late in that race. So we are headed off now to China and Shanghai. You can see from the weather forecast, we are dry throughout qualifying, though cloudy, and at the race, a little bit of rain right at the tail end of it. So that could play a bit of a role in the strategies. We do have a new rival now, Danny Kvyat, so we're looking to beat him any chance we get. And we're starting to get to that point where we're going to have to start managing some of our engine components up and down the grid. We are not quite yet having to take that gearbox penalty. We are probably going to take it next time out when we head to Zandvoort to see if that way we won't be going to Spain and Monaco, two tracks that are very important to qualify well at, and take a grid penalty at either of those. So we will likely take a whole new power unit at when we head to Zandvoort. But we'll try and get on to a bit of a better performance here in China. A bit of a mix of the circuit, definitely some twisty sections there, but that big long back straight, the big DRS zone, it's going to be very important for us to really hook that up and do as well as we can through there. So here we are coming out of the pits here now for our first flying lap of the session down that front straight. The cloud cover keeping the track temperature down, pitching it into turn 1 and 2. Very, very long, decreasing radius right-hander. So tough to try and carry speed, and then down the hill, so easy to lock up that front left. Something we're really going to have to look out for in the race. And very hard getting on the power as you're coming out of turn 3. A little kink, and now hard into the braking zone. A first of the hairpins around. We've run a bit deep, a little bit wide on that. A bit of understeer coming through there. But now through a quick section here, flicking it left. The back end getting way away from us there. As you can see, just a little bit too much exuberance on the throttle. And if you look carefully, you can see some raindrops streaming across the halo and down the road. So we are going to see the track maybe get a bit wetter throughout this session. It wasn't scheduled to rain or expected in the forecast, but we are seeing that dampness and we are seeing some of those drops. So we will see if it gets to a pit situation where we are going to need to make a change of tires. Although if that does come to pass, then there'll certainly be this one opportunity to set a flying lap. But we'll continue to push on as we're coming with the DRS open down that long back straight, picking a braking point just ahead of that 100-meter board and onto the slowest corner of the track there, just right around 40 miles an hour, making that hairpin right-hander, getting on the throttle and pitching it in for the final corner. Try to carry as much speed as you can, use as much of the track. We were a little bit tentative through there. We crossed the line at 33.5, showing as P2, but nearly 3 seconds off of Sebastian Vettel's pace. And as we get out for our second flying lap, you can see we've fallen all the way down to P20, so not a particularly great first lap that we've run. And we are starting our second lap of the session. Still those little drops you can see occasionally hitting the camera, but we are going to just continue to press on. We've got a Red Bull all over the back of us. I believe that's Alex Albon. I think it's the yellow T-cam that I'm seeing behind us. And we've improved a little bit through the first couple of corners, but a little tough getting on the power and getting on the exit there. We aren't really seeing the track dry up quite as much as we'd expect. So it is kind of staying fairly stable in its conditions, but much better through the hairpin there. Although not quite as quick on the exit, but we've gotten ourselves up about a tenth or so. We don't have that big snap of oversteer we had to catch as we did in the first lap. So you can see a big opportunity for improvement in time there, running nearly around a half a second of improvement. Now if we can just get the last couple of corners, and this long right-hander we come into, so difficult to manage getting on the throttle, even in fully dry conditions, just where you get the power down when you start winding on a little bit extra gas, because you're still turning so aggressively, but you're going to try and get it straightened out on the power as early as possible. You can see we've improved by about nearly 7/10 so far on this lap, so a much better lap than our first one, which was a little bit scrappy, but just kind of getting our eye in. We've fallen all the way down now as everybody set their first time to P22, so definitely not the kind of lap time we want to be starting our session with, and we're going to improve, but by about 7/10 of a second or so. So we were about almost 3 seconds off of Seb's first time, and you can see jumps us just up to P18 as we're on to a 32.7. But now with 2.5 minutes left to go in this session, all the remaining cars getting out on track. The rain, still just this little drizzle, so keeping us in dry. And you can see cars coming out of the pits and a big lockup as we're into turn one. The front end just didn't stick and we just scooted way out wide. So plenty of time lost there, but it was in the first couple of corners, so we're able to dial back everything and go for one more attempt at that flying lap. We turned the engine down to try and save as much fuel as possible, and here we are just ahead of Lance Stroll going for that final flying lap. So pitching it in, being a little bit more careful on the brakes that first time. You can see we're losing up a little bit on the delta there, but now we've got to try and make a little bit more ground and try and get ourselves a little bit of space. Otherwise, we're going to end up having to fight with Lance Stroll behind us, who is on a flying lap of his own and catching a bit of slipstream off of us, but basically flat on the delta as we come through the first hairpin. Just little ebbs and flows in the time, getting ahead, getting behind, just hair by hair. We're going to be brave through the quick left-hander, barely lifting it all through there, and now trying to just get the car slowed down for the double right-hander there. We're carrying a little bit more minimum speed through those few corners, that complex. You can see we're up to about 0.2 of a second, but Lance Stroll getting a run on us down into this left-hander. We are just going to have to cover him off, try and drive like he's not there, but you can see good on the entry to that complex, but losing a ton of time on the power, and you can see big snap of oversteer, and that's going to rob us of a huge amount of momentum down this back straight. You can see that delta ticking down, is kind of stabilizing now, but now Lance Stroll up the inside of us while we're on a flying lap. We are going to have to respect his position there. We can't turn all the way to the apex, so we go a little bit deeper on the brakes. Now just trying to use that little bit of extra run up to try and get some momentum, but we went from nearly 0.3 up to just barely being able to improve by about 1/10 as we cross the line this final time.
We're all ready for tomorrow's race, but before we begin, let's have a quick look at those who will be fronting the grid. Bottas, Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel. With qualifying wrapped up, we now have our grid lineup for the big race tomorrow. Be sure to join us then for what will no doubt be a fantastic race.
So here we are, well towards the back, 18th. Mahavir struggling a little bit more than normal. Instead of starting ahead of Latifi, is starting just behind, but 2.8 seconds off of the lead.
It's time to find out which driver is up to the task of claiming the Chinese Grand Prix. We're here in Shanghai. We start a lap here at Shanghai with the long, difficult right-handers of turns 1 and 2, the first of 16 corners that make up this 3.3-mile circuit. The incredibly long back straight provides the best passing opportunity of the lap, with speeds in excess of 200 miles per hour before the braking zone of turn 14. And it's an absolute pleasure to be joined once again by Anthony Davidson. Let's talk briefly about Lando Norris. As ever, the threat of unreliability is never far away, and indeed they'll be starting out of position today due to a power unit component change. So it's going to be a difficult task to move forward from there.
But on the bright side, at least those fresh components can help them maintain the power they need to come through the pack. I expect to see them take a more aggressive approach today to make up for the compromised start.
It's time to see how our drivers are stacking up after yesterday's exciting qualifying session. Good job yesterday from Valtteri Bottas. The Finn starts from pole position, and it's Lewis Hamilton alongside. Moving on to the rest of the grid, we have Vettel, Leclerc, Max Verstappen and Perez, Albon, Ricciardo, Stroll and Carlos Sainz, Gasly, Ocon, Kevin Magnussen and Raikkonen, Oldtimer, Russell, Antonio Giovinazzi and Nicholas Latifi, Raghunathan, Kvyat, Norris. They've taken a grid penalty, and Romain Grosjean sits at the back of the grid. It's almost time for those 5 red lights to go out. Then let's see who can prevail today.
And here we are with the sun out. We are starting on the hard compound of tire. We're going to try and just drive them all the way until we get to that rainy period of the race. But the lights are out. We get a decent launch here, but of course, we're on those hard tires. They're not quite so grippy. Giovinazzi covers us well off. We're onto the grass, but we're just going to sling it around the outside of this long right-hander. Allow us to pull alongside Giovinazzi once again, but Ocon and Magnussen not really giving us any kind of lane to sneak our way up through. But now it's all about trying to get the power down. Everybody else is on a bit grippier tires than we are at this stage, but they are going to have to make a pit stop. We should be able to go as we lunge down the inside into the hairpin. A little bit of contact with the back of Esteban Ocon there, but so many cars just concertinaing up there that they give us a bit of a lane to go down. We're still side by side with Magnussen trying to get that drag race, but now Giovinazzi right on the back of us as we slot in, nearly making contact, but finally everybody has kind of sorted out and is into a straight line kind of running here. So we do get a slow exit though. Giovinazzi makes contact with the back of us though. We had opened the door to him, and that's going to let his teammate Raikkonen by. And now we've got both of the Alfa Romeos kind of sniffing at our heels, and we aren't going to see the typical lunge up the field that I've had the previous few races, mostly because we are on those hard compound of tires. We do have plenty of opportunity to fuel save in the middle part of the race, in the middle sector, but here we are with the rich mix, the overtake, using that slipstream on Kevin Magnussen, and it'll be a fairly easy move for us. He's still alongside, so we're going to leave him a little bit of space on the apex, but we should be able to just out-drag him as we have the outside line there, getting the power down a little bit earlier. And that will be one position up now, up into 13th. So able to move a few slots forward on the grid from some grid penalties, and then making a couple of positions up at the very start of the race. But now we've got a bit of a gap to Ocon in front of us, just outside of that 1 second mark. So we're going to have to see if we can keep pace with those medium tire runners, not let them get too far ahead, because if we fall off the back of Ocon, lose the DRS help, and we aren't able to clear a gap to Magnussen, then we're going to be spending a lot of time battling. And really the crux of our strategy is overtaking or not. It's going to be just about running good lap times on these hard compound tires, trying to find some clean air to work in, so that when other drivers are pitting off of those softs and off of those mediums, we're still going to be out on track. And then once the rain hits, we'll be able to take advantage of that. That's the gamble we're taking from far back on the grid, because it may end up just like in qualifying, where the rain is very light and everybody's able to stay on dry tires. And if we're staying out until we hit that crossover point, we're going to be much slower on our hard tires towards the end of our stint, and everybody will be making up plenty of time and not having to take that extra pit stop to get onto a wet weather set of tires. As we're coming down the back straight here, we're going to go ahead and grab a little bit of slipstream, see if we can't close up the gap to Esteban in front of us. Not going to be in any kind of overtaking position thus far. You can hear the big lift save some fuel into there. Not any reason to go long. You see how early we lift off the throttle, coast into our braking zone before getting on the brakes. That's a good way to save some fuel over the course of the race. And we are underfueled as usual. But here we are jumping ahead now, lap 5, and a few drivers now into the pit lanes, and you can see how we've shuffled our way up the order, and now up to 7th place overall. We have built outside of that 1 second gap to Kevin Magnussen, but we have fallen a bit off the back of Esteban Ocon in front, about 3 seconds of the margin there, and still just holding decent pace overall, and we're doing pretty good in terms of fuel management as well. But one more quick jump, and now up to starting lap 8. A couple of more cars into the pits, and we are up into 3rd position overall. So only now medium tire runners of Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon in front of us. You can see right around that 3 second gap still ahead, but Magnussen has dropped back a little bit. Now lap 13, nothing really happened in the stead there, those 5 laps. We're just kind of driving in our clean air, but Ocon is into the pits there. We've opened up about a 5 second gap to Magnussen though, who is into the pit lane. And now we are going to have the 2 Mercedes who had made their early pit stops off of their soft tires chasing us down on a set of medium compound tires, while our hards will start to fall off. We still have Pierre Gasly in front of us, the last car to pit out of our way, and after that we should be able to take over the lead from him. So more good TV time for the sponsors out in the front of the race, but running in those podium positions so far, we've had decent pace on the hard compounds, so we should be able to keep those in plenty good nick till the end of the stint that we need them. We just need that rain to come at a good time, probably with about, I don't know, maybe 10 laps to go would be a good spot to come in, get a set of inters on. It should mean that everybody else has made their second pit stop. And of course, we want it to come earlier rather than later, but just because the more time that the other cars have to run on the fresh set of tires after their second pit stop, they'll be gaining on us. So if they keep gaining, and we aren't able to build or aren't able to maintain the gap, then when we make that pit stop, we'll be right in the thick of it. So it is definitely a weather-based gamble, but we just don't quite have the raw overall pace around this track. It is a very, very aero-dependent track, and also the slow corners are very chassis-dependent. And chassis is probably our weakest development area of the car so far. So China is not a track that we're particularly speedy in, as you saw in the qualifying session. But you can see those Mercedes, Valtteri Bottas leading the pair this weekend, and they are just reeling me in to the tune of about a second and change every single lap. So they should be able to catch me up fairly quickly here, but we're just going to try and run our own race. You can see Valtteri Bottas 3.6 seconds back, Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen all behind, trying to chase us down in the lead. Charles Leclerc out there, believe he started inside the top 10, so has made his first pit stop as well. But we are starting to lose a fair bit of grip in these hard compound tires, and we jump ahead now, lap 16 of 28, and Valtteri Bottas is all over our gearbox. We're basically flat to our fuel target now, early ahead of schedule, so we can run in a little bit higher fuel mixtures for the rest of the race to try and get we can definitely save some more. But Valtteri Bottas with the DRS open, an easy move after we had taken sole ownership of the lead after Gasly had pitted. But with the DRS, an easy move, a little bit of a back end stepping out as we get on the power. And we'll just have to see if we can stay within the DRS range of Bottas for more than just this first straight, although those fresher medium tires are going to be absolutely rapid compared to what we've got on. Lewis Hamilton, you can see in the background there lurking, only about 2.5 seconds back of us, so we've got some ground to still try and defend from. But we are hanging with the Valtteri through the first couple of corners thus far. So we'll see if we can continue to hang with him until we get to the back straight, maybe get another opportunity for some DRS. Now, we're not going to have really any hope of overtaking the much faster Mercedes. It's on the faster tire. But having that DRS down such a long straight is definitely worth a few tenths of a second in terms of ultimate lap time. So having that little bit of extra help for more than just one lap would be ideal. And we look to be hanging right around that 1 second margin so far. Only a couple of more corners before we hit that detection point, but should be just still inside of it. It's hard to kind of eyeball when you're getting right up onto that 1 second mark, but you can see how much deeper we go into that left-hander. The front tire's really starting to scrub on us. And now trying to be careful getting the throttle down in this long right-hander, not letting the back end get away from us. Around China, it is very much a rear-limited circuit, and we do not have the DRS. You can see that rear wing plane staying closed. But it is a rear-limited circuit, especially because of the hairpins. You're really putting a lot of energy through the rear tires. And those are the tires that wear first around here, and that's really where the trouble is Valtteri Bottas making his second pit stop. So we are just getting inside of the window of those front runners. We'll see if anybody else takes the opportunity. Looks like a Ferrari Charles Leclerc is coming in. And it looks like Lewis Hamilton has actually taken that a lap or so earlier. Trying to see, it looks like, yeah, there he's just coming across the speed trap into the hairpin on the mini map there. So he had fallen a little ways back. But here we are now jumping ahead to lap 20 of 28 as Max Verstappen on the hard compounded tires chasing us down thus far. So here he is 1.5 seconds back. Alex Albon behind Sergio Perez on the hard tires as well. And then Valtteri Bottas, the one chasing us down.
Grip loss in the tires around now, so just be careful.
Thanks for the heads up, Jeff. But Max Verstappen should be able to chase us down. But here we are 21 laps into this race of 28 laps, and still the rain has not yet come. Like I was saying earlier, we kind of wanted it to come around that 10 lap mark. So probably around lap 18, lap 19, but still dry thus far. Of course, the hards can basically run the majority of the race distance, almost all but a couple of laps. But it'll start to turn into a real tough decision if the rain holds off any longer. It'll be really starting to question whether the track will get wet enough. How hard is it going to rain? Should I slap on a set of soft tires, which would make it to the end from where we're at now, or hold out even longer on the hards and go for the intermediates? So definitely some tough choices coming ahead, and a tough fight with Max Verstappen. You see carrying so much more speed through those left-handers. So much more grip on those fresher tires. We've been taking them since the very beginning of the race. You can see just how much he's closed up. We're moving to a little bit to an inside line, try and take a little bit of the steering lock out of it, as we can't put as much strain through the tires as you would on a fresher set of tires in that long right-hander. But here he is with the DRS open, coming down the back straight, pulls to the inside. We aren't going to fight it. We're just going to let him have that inside line, tuck right back underneath him, take a little bit of slipstream, and now see if we can utilize the DRS off of him for a little bit. But so far, the rain has not yet started, and we're about to start lap 22 of 28, so only 6 laps left to go in this one. So it's going to have to rain hard for this strategy to pay off at any stage. You see just struggling to get all the way down to the curbing and on the apex as the car just, with that lessened grip of the hard compound tires, just not able to get turned all the way down there, and is really a struggle. But there it is. You can see lap 22 now. As we jump back on board, there is a bit of rain. You can see those raindrops starting to fall, and there is the tire wear indicator on my multifunction display, that little yellow and black circle just above my fuel mixture there in the bottom right. So tires are definitely knackered at this point.
They have some kind of mechanical problem.
And we are fortunate, as Jeff comes on the radio and tells us Valtteri with a mechanical problem, so he'll drop back a little bit from this chasing group now if he'll be so far off the pace that his fresher mediums will compete with my old hards. But you can see now just struggling to get the power down. How much time Verstappen gained that lap through the traction zones. You can see about 61% wear on that front left, which is taking a bit of heat.
Dries seem like the best tire for now.
Now checking in with Jeff to just see what is the choice, what's the decision to make, and he's saying dry's still the best tire so far. It's going to have to get a fair bit wetter, but it's really a tough decision as we are getting to a point where we have to pit regardless. But if we're going to take a set of dry tires or wet tires is going to be the question. Is now the other Red Bull, Alex Albon, closing up behind us. And turn 1 is kind of a decent indicator of how much grip you have, but you can see how much we slid on the exit there. We're really starting to feel the track dampen up. But it's also very sketchy if you're on slicks and the track is dampening quick. It gets wet quicker than you think. That you have to carry so much confidence into turn 1 before you get on the brakes that it's really sketchy. If you carry too much speed, just like we did in qualifying where we ran out wide, starting our final or our second to last flying run, where we were able to back out of it. But that's really a tough one to try and judge. And the AI much better on throttle in these mixed conditions and on a much fresher set of tires, so should have plenty of opportunity. You can see how much time we've already lost to Verstappen and how much ground Albon has gained, and he's really using the track limits much more aggressively than we are. We're trying to just kind of stay within the grip limit of the tires, because if we go too deep, we are going to be in big trouble. And now the toughest corner on the track when it starts to get damp, just trying to find where that grip is in the changing conditions. But there is Alex Albon just behind, flipping open that DRS. Still not raining hard enough for the DRS to be disabled. And here he is closing on us, but into the braking zone, not able to close on his straight line speed. We had plenty of electrical energy and a big tank slapper that you see a bit of counter steer to save it. And that'll allow Alex to have the run there into the final corner. We go side by side through that fast left-hander. We're all staying out one more lap at least.
We advise moving to mix 2, fuel to mix 2.
You can see now as I made a quick switch onto what tire to put on next, had it set on the medium in case we had to come in for dries, but then making now definitely the determination that when we pit, we are going to be on that wet weather tire. So certainly coming in for the intermediates, we're really feeling the track start to slow down quite a lot. We'll see how much time we lost from our best lap as we cross the first split, 2.6 seconds slower than our best lap in the dries. So definitely the track starting to lose grip.
Even though we're seeing cars struggle in these conditions, if we pit for inters now, we're going to be too slow and we'll burn them out. Make the best of it for the time being. Check your MFD for a new strategy option.
And a two-faced Jeffrey there is telling us to stay out and just handle the slick tires for now and then immediately suggesting the switch to inters. Now, as I could feel from the driving, it was definitely in the intermediate tire time, and you can hear a little bit of rear locking there if I shut up for a second. We slid the brake balance way forward. A big mistake there, trying to get the back end settled, but it just snaps around. There's such that left-right change of direction, and the back end was not able to hang with it. We've got a lot of front brake bias because we can we're really struggling on locking the rear tires in these conditions. So at least putting it on the fronts, it's a little more manageable. If you lock the rears, the back end just wants to go on you. The fronts, you can kind of feather it out and at least, run deep. You can see almost rally style, the back end just snapping on us as we are going to come in and come for the pit lane. So making that change and hard on the brakes, and we've run very deep, and a big hit with the sidewall there, big broken front wing, and a big mistake this late in the race. We were running up in the top 5, and a huge amount of damage to that rear front wing, and it's going to need a change. And you can see just the queue of cars behind it. We're going to lose out to all of them in this front wing change. We'll have to see where we slot back out, but that broken front wing is going to be an extra 6-7 seconds of pit stop time. So slapping the new one on there, getting it in, and a good run, and we have a bit of a hold coming out, and we slot right in behind the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc and just ahead of the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton. So his strategy seems to have not worked out for him. Interesting to see him towards the back of the field, but now only a few laps left to go in this one, and we are in a big train of cars, and we're gonna have to try and see how well we can manage the intermediate tires, see if we can make any moves or if we're just gonna struggle in this wet condition. We're still inside the top 10, running 8th place now on lap 25 of 28. So we are right there, but we have Leclerc in front, Hamilton and Vettel behind, though a bit of a gap to help with Vettel.
The stewards, DRS will be offline.
And so yeah, definitely the right lap to come in and pit on, but a huge mistake coming into the pit entry there. That big wing damage is going to cost us massively at the end of this one. You can see just struggling to keep the car gripped up through these corners as Leclerc and Ocon, who we spent a lot of time behind at the start of this race. Ocon able to get the jump on us, so the strategy was a decent call for us, but the mistake, the two mistakes, one in this corner here on the in lap where we lost a good 3 seconds of time, and then an extra mistake hitting that wall, breaking the front wing.
3 laps of fuel remaining.
Now we have plenty of extra fuel on board. You can see running about nearly 3/10 of a lap over fueled, and we are running a bit more of a low downforce setup than some of these other AI cars, so we are able to close in the straight line. So even without DRS, we could make a move, but it's all about trying to keep the traction through that final set of corners before that long straight, which is where they have a huge advantage in getting that momentum, getting that launch. And at this point, we're just trying to manage it. Leclerc is starting to open up a bit of a gap to us at this stage. We're going to see if we can close it down in the remaining 2 laps here. I believe we just started lap 27. And we're going to see we make some time through that long right-hander, but just getting on the throttle is so difficult. Trying to manage the slip of the tires here, and it's just a tough condition, a tough track. Most of the tracks that are rear limited or you have lots of slow exits are definitely the harder ones when it comes to wet weather running. And so this is definitely a challenge of a track where the back end likes to step out in many places all over the circuit. You can see just the wiggles getting on the power, how many little corrections we have to make just to keep the back end from stepping out on us, keeping us from making a big old spin that'll send us way down the order if we're not careful. But so far, we're keeping touch with this train, but not quite making the inroads that we need in order to make any kind of overtake. And of course, we have the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton all over the back of us now. This time, at least, we're on the same age of tire, similar, and he's got a faster car, but we are on similar tires. We're not going to have that disadvantage, at least, and we do have an advantage in straight line speed. So once we're able to get off of this long right-hander, we're able to crank up the engine, you deploy the battery that we've done a good job of saving thus far. We're really going to have to use it to defend into the final stages of this race if we want to finish still in 8th with a good haul of points. But you can hear the engine not really revving out in the traction zones. We're really short shifting quite a lot to try and keep those torque numbers down while still putting a ton of throttle in. Just helps it to control the car a little bit more. But that quick run's still so tough into turn one. You're braking, you're turning, and just hoping that the front end sticks. And if it's so unforgiving, if you get understeer early in that corner, you're just going to understeer the whole way through it unless you really give up a lot of time and slow the car down massively. That turn one, turn two, turn three complex, so difficult to get right, especially in these wet conditions. But the rain is definitely coming down, so there's no worry about having to come in for a set of slick tires maybe in the light rain like we saw in qualifying. Definitely a heavier rain situation. Not full wets out at this stage, but you can see the amount of spray that's being kicked up. Makes it even harder to follow that car ahead of you just because you can't see where you're going as well. Now, thankfully, in the game, the spray is not nearly anywhere as bad or as vicious as it is in real life, but it is still quite a struggle once you get up behind something. You can hear that locking into that corner as we're getting on the brakes there, but Leclerc behind Ocon, and you can see him back end stepping way out, and just how early we're barely letting it creep over 10,000 RPM before we're shifting and having to make multiple saves getting on the throttle. And now to the inside, we're going defensive, trying to break the toe from Lewis Hamilton. But you can see even with the slipstream, when we turn up our overtake, when we turn up our system, we're able to defend from him just there. So no opportunity for him to line up a move down the inside. We're able to hold it off as we're about to make the start of the final lap of the race on board here. We've fallen outside of 1 second of Charles Leclerc. Obviously, that 1 second margin doesn't really matter because there is no DRS, but we are running much slower lap times here and just not going to be in a position to attack, but running 8th right now with Lewis Hamilton just behind. Now, sometimes in the lighter rain conditions, you worry about overheating the intermediates, which was kind of the risk of potentially coming in a lap earlier and the reason I didn't want to do it. But when it's raining like this, you're not really going to have to do any puddle hunting to keep those temperatures down. You're pretty much smack in the middle of ideal intermediate tire condition. So it's nothing to worry about the tires. We're doing such a short stint on them. It's just all about hitting the lines. But we've run very wide there through that corner. Lewis Hamilton up the inside of us, and we make contact. He sticks his nose right at the inside, and the back end steps out on us, and we lose the position to Hamilton. And here comes Sebastian Vettel, and he's gone by as Lewis Hamilton just sticking his nose up the inside of us. We make contact with the back of Vettel there, and now we've dropped from 8th all the way down to 10th as Vettel was able to close that gap in the intermediate phase. Drove very well on the wet conditions, but that has cost us big. Luckily, no damage to us from that, but on the last lap there, Lewis just sticking his nose up, collecting the rear of us. Luckily, the second contact with the front end of Lewis, as we had a little bit of a look to maybe make a dive on Sebastian there, but definitely not in a position to it, and we've got 16 seconds on Daniel Ricciardo behind, so no worry really about falling out of the points. We're just going to take it nice and easy across the line, but a huge missed opportunity, taking only 1 point home as opposed to 8 or 4.
Pick up rubber and bring it home.
There'll be many smiles at the factory after that one. A great race and a real team performance to take the win here in Shanghai. Anthony Davidson, what helped them deliver this result, do you think?
Rain always has the potential to liven up a race and mix up the order, and they've taken full advantage of that to claim the victory today. It's always a bit of a lottery when the conditions are like this, but they've managed to stay on circuit and have come out on top.
Red Bull put up an outstanding fight for the front position today, and it's great to see it paid off for them. They do so much for the sport that you can't help but be delighted by today's race win.
Interesting to see that Alex Albon actually took the win and not Max Verstappen. And of course, Sergio Perez rounding out an interesting podium order there. So definitely not going to help Verstappen's championship hopes, giving up a win to his teammate.
And after this round of the World Championship, here's how things look in the drivers' table. Today's performance means Max Verstappen now owns the top spot in the drivers' championship. Let's focus on the driver of the day, Anthony Davidson. Who do you pick?
But it's absolutely got to be Alexander Albon, no hesitation. He put in a performance today that's only going to build further upon his already growing reputation.
It's time to see how things are shaping up in the Constructors' Championship. The lead at the top comes down after a strong weekend from the challenging pack. Meanwhile, Renault move up the table with another strong performance this weekend. I'm equal parts exhausted and elated with this weekend of Formula One. Be sure to join us for the next one.
So close to grabbing that 4 points that Lewis Hamilton took instead of just the one, but still getting into the points is a good day for us, I would say. So I can't complain there. It was a touch and go strategy around that track. The rain came so late that it made the strategy very tough to nail down. If that rain was probably 4 or 5 laps sooner, we would have been in a much better situation there. But we're jumping into the activity. We've got a press interview with Will Buxton coming up. I will not be airing that. It's not super important. It just kind of affects your department morales, but we will continue to do activities that help improve the stats of Mr. Mahavir. In the second seat there, we're going to go ahead and spend some of our dev points on some aero rear wing upgrades, so hopefully those should come good and help us out quite a bit. But that's the only one we're going to put into effect. So we are hitting a point where we are going to have to kind of be saving some of the engine components. So essentially through the practices, we're going to run an old set of components that are worn beyond the 50% mark. That's typically when I'm going to turn them into practice components. And then we can start utilizing some in the races. Of course, we are planning next race to go ahead and take a full grid penalty. So a whole new power unit, whole new gearbox. So we've got an extra one in the pool. But Zandvoort, it's a track that is not the easiest to overtake around, but it's one we can make some ground up on, and having a good strategy will be ideal for us. But the first time F1 will be visiting the Netherlands in quite some time. Another track that unfortunately has yet to see the real-life F1 calendar was slated for the 2020 season, but much like Hanoi was unable to be visited due to the pandemic. However, this one is still, unlike Hanoi, is planned for the 2021 season, so we should see cars around the Circuit Zandvoort sometime in the near future. So hopefully we get to see how good they were at guessing the pacing of the cars between F1 2020, the game, and how well they perform in real life. But before we head off to that, I want to thank you guys for watching once again, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.